smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
Hey, beautiful people. Thank you so much for being here. If you're watching me on the replay, thank you so much for watching me on the replay. I appreciate you. My goal in coming on here is to help you shift the way you think. And I do that by talking to people that are doing things to empower the lives of others and sharing this story. But I also, like, one of my absolute favorite things to do is to talk about relationships. And I have this thing where I just honestly love helping people solve problems. And individually, it's easy for me to work with people, but as a couple, it's a lot more challenging. And it's challenging because I'm dealing with two different people from two different backgrounds with different issues coming together. That's a lot. So I don't enjoy couples counseling. I don't want to couples counseling, but I actually enjoy talking about this stuff. Come to me individually, but don't come to me together. So I do that with my guy Jeff. I'm going to add him to the stream. And if this is your first time watching me, I have an audio podcast. And if you're listening to me on an audio podcast, thank you for listening to me. And you can also catch me streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. And I'm going to bring Jeff on to the stream. So this is my guy.
Hey, how's it going?
This is my guy, Jeff. Jeff, how are you today?
I am delightful. It's Friday night. My work is not even a little bit done, but it will be by Sunday, just in time to restart again.
You make it sound really mundane. Just
I
in time
mean,
to start again.
it's good to, well, I'm saying it's good to be busy, but
It is.
so this
I appreciate.
Misty Love, hey, Princess. I think I found out later her name is Princess.
I appreciate you being here. So first, before we start, because you guys know if me and Jeff are on, we're talking about relationships. But Jeff actually does way more. Actually, he's not a relationship guy. He just actually enjoys solving problems. Can you tell people a little bit about what you do as an executive coach?
Yeah, well, it's funny. It doesn't have, when people say relationships and they mean romantic relationships. Yes, being an executive coach isn't about romantic relationships, but it's very much about relationships and interpersonal dynamics. And so a big part of what I do is help people, to use a Celeste term, shift the way you think about how you're engaging with yourself, how you're engaged with others, change the way that people experience you. Because oftentimes, we know the feeling, that you're your own worst enemy. And so that's a lot of kind of what it is, helping people figure out how to get out of their own way and to conquer the things that are holding them back that they know are possible, but somehow they never end up there.
I had an amazing person on the other day talking about how much we bully ourselves. When you
Mm-hmm.
say we're our worst enemy, we're literally bullying ourselves all day. And it's hard to create changes if we're bullied. And it's easy to stay in situations if we're bullying ourselves. It's easy to stay in a situation where we're being bullied.
Right. Negative self-talk. You're going to do something and you could never do that. No, you always mess that up. Oh, there you go again. That's just you. Right. That feeling, that nagging feeling that's oftentimes personified as an actual voice in your head that's telling you that you can't, that it's not going to work. What will people say? They're all going to laugh at you. It'll just be another thing on your pile of pile of failures, that is. So some of it's that, and some of it's just literally the strategies to how you're blocking your own blessings, so to speak, and how to undo
Mm-hmm.
that.
And then when it comes to that voice, I always say it's like this voice is like tapping at you. For me, like I have a very really clear mind. As soon as that voice starts, I'm like, okay, what's the solution? What do I need to do? I start getting into that mindset. A lot of people, this starts happening, and then it just becomes background noise.
Right.
And that background noise ends up really controlling what they choose to do or not do, because we all have choices at the end of the day, but that noise is what's stopping them, you know?
right? Well, you can get in a rut and kind of just spiral around and around in that rut, right? Where like, let's just take one, I eat because I'm unhappy, right? So food is my comfort. And then I look in the mirror and I weigh a pound more than I weighed last week. So I'm unhappy. So I eat. So I'm unhappy. So I eat, right? When it's like when Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck are chasing each other around the tree, you know what I mean? Like you're not making any progress. And so figuring out how to do something different when you feel unhappy or what else could make you feel happy, short circuiting that is a lot of what any problem solving is. So that's why it's all related. I might focus on more corporate and business, but that's why it translates so well to relationships because it just does. It's all the same thing.
That's true. It's good. I'm glad you kind of reframed that a little bit because that does. I remember one of our shows we did talk to somebody who had issues with their family. It's literally, and a lot of the things I talk about with the romantic relationships can be interchanged with all kind of relationships that we have.
You spend more time before the pandemic, particularly, you spend more time with your coworkers than you do with your wife or husband. 40 waking hours a week, that's a lot. You don't spend 40 waking hours with that, depending on your life. You may not. Exactly, Nicole. It's a vicious cycle, and so you got to pluck yourself out of it. So that's what we try to do. Whatever the issue, that's what we're trying to do.
Yes. And one of the issues that comes up in relationships is like domestic violence.
Mm.
And it's something I kind of talk about periodically, but I want to take some time to talk about some news that came on recently. I'm going to just share this story so everybody can see what I'm talking about. And then can you, as I'm about to share this story, and after that, I want us to think about like kind of defining what that looks like, domestic violence. So Major Hype, who is a very popular comedian. Would you say he's a comedian?
He's a comedian, and he has an interesting lane. He's basically like a Caribbean comedian. So he's the one that does those impressions, like, oh, here's how a Trini orders at a restaurant. Oh, here's how a Haitian orders at a restaurant. Right. So that's people probably know him from those viral videos.
Hmm. And so his estranged wife reports that he abused her for years. It says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically, she talked about asking her family to forgive her. She stayed away because he beat her so bad that she was not like she couldn't really recognize her. And he's somebody. It looks like he has 1.1 million followers on Instagram. Before the pandemic, he was doing shows, and people liked him.
He's popping.
So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I want to like kind of like first before I go into this issue, I want to talk about Major Hype, but I want to ask you to help us define what domestic violence kind of is.
Oh yeah. Oh well. I think most people are familiar with the idea. In this case, we're talking about physically, but really, it's physical abuse, threats of abuse, even just saying, uh, shut up or I'll make you shut up, right? Even I would count those things. I think those things clearly count, right? Just instead of dealing with somebody like an equal, trying to hurt them or coerce them, or actually following through and doing so.
Hmm. And I think when you say like shut up, I think that feels a little bit more overt and clear. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some things that aren't as clear that people may not see or recognize. The isolation piece, trying to isolate you from.
Yeah.
There's the financial abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that because if a lot of people only know about the physical abuse as being part of the thing, but there's a lot of emotional abuse as well that people kind of struggle with and don't even understand that they're in an abusive relationship.
Right. Well, right, because there's different kind of gradations, but certainly somebody telling you a common thing that says, "Look at you. That's what the way you're like this. No one could ever love you. I don't know. I don't even know. Sometimes I don't know. You're lucky you're with me, right? Making someone feel like they're unlovable, and I'm the only one that could ever love you, and therefore you're lucky, and you're lucky whatever you get. Financial abuse, right? Somebody controls your spending to the point where you're not allowed to purchase things or make any decisions. You're reliant on them, right? Oftentimes it has to do with control and making somebody so reliant upon you that that they don't have independence in their own life.
Yeah. And I think that for somebody who's never been in that situation, they may struggle with understanding, like, why would somebody stay in a situation like that? What do you say to those people that may not understand, like, the kind of psychological dynamic behind, the why people
Right.
kind of get into the situation?
Well, there's so many reasons, but one thing that I think you see is that people don't abuse you on the first date, right? They don't open the door for you and then hit you and then tell you you're nothing and then you continue to date them. That's very uncommon. But more common is that you get wrapped up. It's a torrid love affair. They're everything you dream of, and then suddenly you make them mad and they go nuts on you. And then you're like, oh, I didn't even. What did I do? But they're really not this person. They're the person that I met. And so if we can just get whatever made them mad, I just won't do that, and then we'll be better. And slowly but surely, whatever makes them mad is more and more, and it's more and more frequent or less and less severe. It's to the point where, oh, I hate the way you eat. I hate the way you sleep. I hate the way you breathe. Right. And before you know it, you're living, it's a total codependent lifestyle, meaning
Hmm.
all your emotional needs are subverted in order to simply make sure that person doesn't go up. It's like trying to defuse a bomb all the time, right?
Hmm.
Walking on eggshells is the analogy people use.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so you don't realize you're doing that. Or sometimes people feel like, well, and then when they blow up later on, they apologize and they say, listen, I'm so damaged. I love you so much, but you're the only one that understands me. You're the only one. And they kind of gash you up like, you're so good at taking my shit. You're so good at it. I kick you in the teeth and you keep coming back. That's great. That makes you a good person. And
Hmm.
people weirdly, I don't want to say weirdly, but counterintuitively, they eat that up because they go, well, I'm like the abuse whisperer. This person there, I'm the only one that can stay with them. And we're saying all this. Sometimes they just say, if you leave, I'll kill you.
Yep. Yep. And that psychological abuse is hard. And an example, I actually had Jermaine Morris on my show yesterday. He talked about this experiment where you put a frog in water, right?
I was
If
going to
you were
say
to
the
put
same
a
thing.
frog in hot boiling water, it will jump all the way out really quick. But if you put a frog in water and little by little change the temperature, the frog will literally adjust to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right.
think when you think about domestic violence, it doesn't start, from you're nothing and all of this negative self talk. It starts with being kind, and then little by little, you make excuses for the little things that come up. Over time, the little excuses add up, but you've already acclimated yourself to that environment where you just kind of stay. And it shows you how powerful the mind is, because logically, you some people are know they're being abused, but and they'll leave and they go back, and it's a lot of psychological trauma from being in that situation that makes it really challenging to leave.
Yeah. It's not, I wish it was uncommon, but it's actually fairly common. I
Hmm.
mean, most people know, it's common enough where 100, 150 people. They actually call that Dunbar's number, right? That's the number that most people know. Like that's like most people's circles about 100, 150 people. You certainly know somebody that's enduring or delivering abuse like this. Like factually, if you know 150 people, you do, because it's not rare, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. And when I bring up Major Hype, he's a public figure who kind of, I feel like for people that are kind of like always online and a public figure, things are going to happen where, things get out. And so, how do you think people should respond to this? Or how do you think people respond to this? Because you got one person saying one thing. I'm not sure if he came out and said he did not abuse her or not. But
So I think
what do you
just
say?
now, Celeste, I think just like literally when I say this, as we're doing this, he just ended a like an IG live or a Facebook live where I believe he denied everything.
Okay.
We didn't watch it, so I don't know. I don't think it was because I saw a few comments that said, "Oh, this was like this was just like R. Kelly's Gayle King interview." So of course R. Kelly denied everything in that interview. So that makes me think that Major Hype denied it too. Sorry,
Hmm.
we didn't see it because we're doing this.
Hmm.
But this is as prickly an issue as you can imagine because the emotions are so high. So here's the thing. There's there's a psychological mechanism called transference, right? And what transference is when basically you see a person or a situation as analogous to your own. For example, I just, if Celeste has locks, and let's say that my mom had locks, right? Let's just say, and then my mom also spoke in a kind of melodic, pretty voice like Celeste has, and then I start to almost like associate Celeste with my mom, and then when someone says something about Celeste, I say, well, "Don't you talk about Celeste?" And it's almost like she's kind of become my proxy mom. Right? Does that make sense? If you ever met somebody that reminds you of your cousin, they almost get rubbed off a little bit of that cousin love. They kind of get that. That's called transference. And so what happens is when a situation like this comes out, people's transference runs wild. So some people, we're just going to say someone was physically abused. And when they hear this, immediately Major Hype becomes their abuser in their mind. And they become very upset. And they hate him, and they know right away he's the worst person that ever lived. And then someone else has been accused of abuse falsely, or they feel falsely. And so immediately they say, that woman's a liar, you can't believe, so forth and so on, because their transference in the story, they've made themselves Major Hype, or someone else in the story, they've made themselves the estranged wife. And that's why these become very hard to talk about. The reason why I wanted to talk about it is because I think we have to be very careful, and that's unhealthy, right? That's an unhealthy way to approach it, because the truth is we don't know what happened. But when I say this, and I'm a guy, right? When I say this, does that mean I'm saying women are always lying, or usually lying, or mostly lying? Women are liars? That's not what I mean at all, right? What I mean is just that I think the most important and safe thing we can do is to take all accusations very seriously, but no matter what type of person it is, whether it's a woman, whether it's a man, whether they're black, whether they're white, we take it very seriously, but we don't take it as a fact. We have to sometimes let the facts present themselves as they come, rather than like, I don't know, I watched his FB Live and he seemed like he was telling the truth to me. No, I read her interview and that seemed true to me. You're not a human lie detector. And we really don't have enough information. So we treat her with sensitivity, but we don't decide that we know what happened, which is super, because of this transference, it is super duper hard to do. What do you think, Celeste?
Yeah, no, you make a really good point. P-Love, I'm going to answer your question in a second, because I want to kind of follow up Jeff's point with another story that kind of actually kind of speaks to what he's trying to say. So Cynthia Centonio Brown's husband, she's someone who was in jail for 15 years for murdering her pimp,
Mm-hmm.
was accused by his ex-wife of sexually abusing her. And, his name got dragged in the mud, and, people rallied around her. And she admitted that she lied.
Yeah.
Right? Did you hear about this?
Vaguely, but it doesn't. The fact is, that doesn't have any bearing on the next case. It's not like, see, so maybe she's Pam Long. It's not that. It's that every type of person, they used to think, well, a priest would never, unless he's a priest, he's a man of God, he would never touch a kid. Being a priest does not mean you're not a molester. Just someone telling me I couldn't have done this, I'm a priest, I would say, that doesn't convince me at all. The individual situation is a situation, because in this world, there's some priest that was innocently accused somewhere. And then somewhere else, there's someone who we just know is the angel of all angels. And they look at, Bill Cosby. When the first accusation came out about Bill Cosby, I think most people that listen, I'm going to guess that the black community is Celeste's fan base. I'm going to assume that it's not all Asian people listening. So, when we heard that Bill Cosby was Bill Cosby, no way. Because immediately in transference, they're taking down our good black men. That's what we all jump to, right? And then one story, not besides the fact that many of the accusers are black women, besides that, but we don't know them. We know Heathcliff Huxtable, right? A dozen stories, 2 dozen stories. close to 50 women said he did something. At least they didn't all say he raped them. They said he did something. At what point do I say, you know what, men? The fact that I feel close to black men is not enough to deny 50 people that there's something to this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So instead, I think you just got to hold early on. You got to hold back and say, listen, let it come out. If I knew Pam Long, who's the woman you just showed, who I guess fabricated it, when she accused it, I would have said, oh my God, this sounds so tough. Listen, I support you in going to the cops. I support you in whatever you're doing. But she said, and I want you to stand up and say that this person did this. And I can't do that because this hasn't played out. It's different when it's like your sister, somebody that where you just go, it's not my job to be objective here. In this instance, if it's my kid that's accused or my kid that's accusing, it's not my job to go, listen, daughter, let the facts play out. In that case, of course, I'm biased. But in the world, like people in the world, it's more like, let's do an investigation than it is, I've decided that men are always guilty. I've decided blacks are always innocent. I've decided women are always liars. That is a terrible strategy that will have you looking like all the people who marched for Jussie Smollett one day after he says what he said. And then it turns out, he's telling like dumb lies, like not even like good ones.
Right. I love the fact, obviously one story doesn't negate another story. Thinking about how things played out, Jussie Smollett was another big one, right? How do you suggest? Because I think people get really emotionally invested in this stuff, and I'm trying to say this delicately. I think that a lot of times, uh, males will end up getting the brunt of accusations where there's this assumption that it's true. Like when the accusation comes out and it's a male, I think with women tends to be giving more leeway around certain accusations than men are. And even like if you hear about like a teacher abusing a child that's a female, unfortunately, guys will be like, "Man, she's bad. My teachers wasn't bad like that back then." And then if a male is accused of abusing the same, like we talk about the same age, the same career, the same child, there's a whole different mindset around it, which it's baffling to me.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
I think that there's like a moral exchange rate. Certain things are thought of as bad for one gender, race, sex, position, and not the other. And I think that maybe even sometimes the exchange rate is a little bit warranted, but overall, so I'll give you like an example. If you say domestic violence, most people, and this is just statistically, okay, when you say domestic violence, what people picture, a guy, literally they call the tank tops a wife beater, a guy in a wife beater hitting a woman. But in actuality, if we're just saying who hits who more, believe it or not, women are statistically most likely to hit an intimate partner. Okay. But that being said, it's not so easy to say, okay, then it's women that are bad, because men are by far more likely to kill an intimate partner. Okay. So women hit more, but men kill more. The truth is, these statistics don't help us, right? It's like looking at how likely is it to rain on a Wednesday? Okay. 20%, then I'll go outside in shorts in a t-shirt. No, what the statistics, the stats don't matter on an individual day. On the individual day, it's raining or it ain't. Either it happened or it didn't. So in that same way, you got to let go of the idea that somehow you can like guess and use heuristics and just kind of guess, well, men always do this. Oh, women always lie. It's not the case. And so you got to remember, if the roles were reversed, what would I say? So when a 14-year-old boy, a 28-year-old teacher is arrested for sleeping with her 14-year-old male student, and you say, oh, where were the teachers like this in my day? Flip the genders before you say that. That'll let you know how much of an effect does the exchange rate have. When Jussie Smollett comes out and says, they had to put a noose around my neck, right? And you say, okay, well, I mean, in like a Chicago subway, I mean, I guess it's not impossible. Switch it around and say, a white guy says, oh, they ran up on me and they spray painted Black Lives Matter on my face. You go, once you flip the races, suddenly you go, my skepticism kicks back in, right? So I so with Major Hype and his wife, I just say, okay, if it was in the other direction, would I be so sure? Okay, we don't know enough. I personally am never going to conduct the investigation, but eventually, assuming she goes to the police and does all these things, then slowly but surely stuff will kind of come out. But don't dismissing Bill Cosby accusation because you like him and he's a proxy grandfather to you. Think of all the women that would have been safe if people weren't doing that in the 70s and 80s, who would have been saved, that is.
That's good. And I love the fact where you flip the script. 'Cause when you flip the script, it makes sense, right? When Lil Wayne talked about, or somebody in his camp talked about, getting having sex, having their virginity broken by, uh, it was a video that went around. They were 14. It was kind of bragging about it, and if I think that people don't even understand like how like bad that was to happen. Like that's sexual abuse. A lot of men struggle with communication and they only know how to have sex because a lot of men were abused growing up. And I'm not just talking about it could from females and from males.
Right.
And go ahead, you want to make a point?
Well, I'm just so like, I happen to have been, I was a 13-year-old boy for a whole year. So I happen to have been one. And so I can tell you, when I was 13, if some bad video vixen 22-year-old had wanted to have sex with me, I would have done it. I would have said, this is abuse. I would have done it. But it would have been so weird and I would have been so wrapped up in her. She would have been by far like the closest I come to touching a woman since the day I was born. Like a woman, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if she'd have said, oh, go murder somebody, I was anything for you, boobs. I mean, lady. I mean, only grown woman that I've ever, you know what I mean? Like, so that's why it's abusive, not because it's like disgusting. Like I hated boobs at 13. Trust me, I did not. But I know I like boobs. I remember being 13. I like boobs, but I thought I was ready for women, but I'm barely ready for women now. So I certainly wasn't ready for women when I was 13. And it's a power dynamic, right? I'll flip the script in a weird way. Let's say that there's somebody, that they only date people that have special needs, people that, I'm just saying have Down syndrome. They are neurotypical. They don't have Down syndrome, but they only date people that do. But they're the same age, so it's fine, right? No, there's something bad about that because they're not equals. They're not equals as people. They have equal human rights, but they don't have the same capacity. One of them is too susceptible to being manipulated by the other. That's what it's like to be a 13-year-old boy with a 28-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. And we recognize that when it's in the other direction, when it's a 28-year-old man and a 13-year-old girl, we recognize that far better. When she goes, he loves me. He says I'm mature for my age. And oh, honey, that's what them R. Kelly say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So again, at your phrase, flip the script. I think that's what you got to do.
So how do you think, people should respond? Like, if I go and reshare one of his videos, am I not supporting her? I think one of the things that when this comes out, there's this like split in support, and people that may still like his stuff or whatever can be ostracized and canceled. How do you think that should work?
That's interesting. So in terms of like sharing his videos or whatever it is, I think there probably is something it might not be the time for that. Does that make sense? I think there probably is something insensitive about that. I personally try to separate the art from the artist, and here's what I mean by that. I don't now pretend that I don't like the Cosby Show. I never liked that. When Rudy sang "Hey, night and day," I don't pretend that didn't entertain me. It did. It doesn't matter. I will never do anything to enrich Bill Cosby. I won't pay for his shows, or I won't pay to go see him if he were to get out or something like that. But I don't pretend that the art's not good. So right now, for Major Hype, I would basically put him a little bit on hiatus. Hopefully he's doing it himself. And when everything plays out, since he says he's innocent, it'll end up being that he's innocent. In the end, if nothing comes of it, you kind of got to let it go too, if that makes sense. Like if the wife recants, or if the police investigate and everything, it's like, wait, at a certain point you got to kind of drop it. You make your own decision. But for the moment, I'm probably hesitant to like, let me go to a Major Hype show tomorrow, because it's not that he's innocent. That's not why you don't. It's not that I've decided he's innocent. It's that I've decided that this can't be known yet, not by us. Only people that know right now is him and her.
Yes, that's so true. I want to go to this question by Miss P. Love. Most of society talks about physical abuse, but very rarely do they discuss emotional or mental abuse. What are your thoughts about that?
Um, I think that's accurate. I think that physical abuse is a lot easier to define because it has a bright red line, right? You basically just can't hit anyone for any reason. You can't go, well, listen, I slap my boyfriend lightly. I just slap his face just to show him respect, to teach him respect, right? So everyone knows, no, there's no level of that that's acceptable, right? But with emotional abuse, at what point is saying to somebody, shut up, will you? Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Where it's like, whoa, that has become abusive, right? It's hard. It's a gradient. And so I think that people don't necessarily realize, and some people, they talk coarse and they go, that's just how we do it, whatever. Rather, I think you should hem as close to the ideal as you can, meaning you should speak with ultimate respect. Like, there's no reason why you should respect your mate less than someone at work. So if you can't say something to somebody at work, you ain't going to work there forever, but you're supposed to be with this person forever, but you're going to talk to them crazy. So I know people's emotions get the better of them, and sometimes they do, but you should know, man, this person constantly deviates from, basically like how you talk to someone with respect. Does that make sense? And I think that's like a good North Star to have. It's not the same as a hard line, but if you're constantly telling someone, don't make me, like, yeah, that's really far, because you can't do that at all in the street. Assault, like legal assault, is just threatening to hit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Saying I'll fuck you up is assault.
Mm-hmm.
And battery is when you do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So in the street, I can't tell a stranger I'll break your teeth. Then clearly I can't tell my lover in my bed that we've been together for years and have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I
That's
also
hard.
think, individually, when you think about mental health, it's easier for us to go to the doctor if my hand's bleeding, but emotional stuff, we don't go. It's just things we don't talk about, especially if you are being taken care of, meaning like your Maslow's hierarchy needs are being met. Those kind of things you say, well, it's better than I had it when I was a child, especially if you're your own bully and you talk to yourself wrong. It's easier to stay in that environment where that abuse is still happening. One of the most powerful things we can do is know who we are and understand what we're thinking, right? I just think that, if you don't ever take anything from my podcast, understand what you're feeling and what you're thinking, because you have more power than you actually realize. And a lot of the situations you find yourself in, I promise you, you're not really stuck. You just feel stuck. And that's a completely different place to be in.
Right. There's a phrase I like about a lot of people being stuck in different ways. They go, yes, I'm up, neck deep. I'm up to my neck in human shit, but it's warm and it's mine. And that's what it feels like to be stuck. You know what I mean? You're in this thing, but listen, it's warm. I'm used to it. I can handle it. This is how I live. But the truth is, you'll probably feel better if you do the hard thing of saying, yes, we've been together. Yes, it's going to be traumatic to leave, but that trauma will fade as life goes. But the trauma of staying and continue to be abused will never fade. It'll only, if anything, it'll intensify. So there's a lot of stuff like that you got to kind of like, we all know first, it's hard to get into the pool, right? You're like, oh, it's going to be cold. Then when you're in, suddenly it's hard to get out. It's going to be cold again.
Yeah.
So it's not really that outside's cold or the pool is cold. It's that the transition is hard.
Yes.
And you just have to be willing to make the transition.
Yes, whether we're talking about domestic violence or literally anything else, transition is hard, change is hard. And it's like logically, a lot of people understand where they are and they know where they want to be, but trying to get to that point is so challenging. Jermaine, another thing he said yesterday is that the changes we need to make is kind of like walking over a pond, right? Just walking over a puddle, not a pond, but it
Mm.
feels like we're walking over the Grand Canyon. right?
Right.
Like that's what that feeling. And if you really think about the two differences, I'm not gonna want to walk over the Grand Canyon. If that's I'm just going over the feeling of what it feels like, I'm not gonna do it,
Yeah.
right? And so trying to push yourself out of that comfort zone is going to be so important.
Yeah. And we get trained kind of by our, we have these survival reflexes that sometimes they don't help us. So, like one example, they do studies. So they'll take like a dog and put him in a room, and the whole room is the floor is electrified. Like it can be, they can turn on the electricity, right? So then they'll sound an alarm. They go boop, and then when they hit the boop, a second later, electric floor. So now the dog really, Bart, it really hates that, right? Next time, and it looks around how to get out. And the first few times to do it, the dog will run around trying to get out, trying to get off this electric floor. After a while, when they sound the alarm, the dog will hunker down, knowing that it's knowing that there's no way out. The dog will simply steel itself to endure the pain. Then, even if they open the door, when they hit the alarm, the dog hunkers down. It no longer even looks for the door, right?
Yeah.
And so we can be like that, where you get trained into this pain, and so well, when this is happening to me, I disassociate. When this is happening to me, I just grip my teeth and go to another place. And then it gets to the point where maybe even you have a way out, and that's why you'll hear like it'll be that some now this is a pretty gendered thing. Some psycho guy will kidnap a woman, and first she's trying to get away, trying to get away. Then 3 years later, he can like put her in the car, then go to the store. And she's a prisoner. And part of her knows she's a prisoner. But she over this time, she's learned things go best for me when I just do what this person wants. And so now she's looking right at the cashier and she could say, help, call the police right now, but she doesn't do it. Not because she loves her situation. That's not exactly it. It's rather emotionally, she solved this a new way. I endure this, and that's how I get my needs met.
Damn, that's that. And there's so many different stories on that being true, where they'll say these stories of people who, they've, and the person that has kidnapped them has freely allowed them to roam because they know they're coming right back. Um, and I know, with the pandemic, the domestic violence rates have skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I would be doing my audience a disservice if I didn't talk about like some ways that we can, kind of think about, um, you know, change and trying to get out of a situation. Um,
Yeah,
so,
relationships are hard. I was hoping you would return today. Good to see you. Uh,
hey, relationships are so hard. So I want to, kind of think about, and relationships so hard is saying, I appreciate the both of you helping to shift the way I think. Oh, I love that. I don't know who you are, but I love that so much.
mhm.
I am in the midst of a transition away from a partner who has crossed the communicated boundary more than once. Transitions are so hard. Yeah, they are.
Yeah, for those. So
Uh,
the last time I was on, relationships are hard. That commenter talked about, kind of alluded to being, I would say, emotionally blackmailed by someone they were in a romantic relationship with, because that we and they're anonymous for a reason that will become clear, because that person was blackmailing them because of their sexuality, right? That they were in a romantic relationship with them, and the person is saying something like, I'll tell your family, or be ashamed if your family found out. If you stop calling me or coming to see me at night, I might get so upset that it'd be a shame if your family found out what you do when you say you're going to Bible study, right? And so I'm glad that you are listening again. I'm glad you're making that transition. And as tough as it is to do that, I think that what's important is that it's living a lie is permanently hard. But the minute you start living the truth, it's hard, and then it gets better. It goes towards getting better. It's work. But living a lie is just as hard next week as it is today. It'll be just as hard forever. So I encourage
yeah, it
you. I'm
is,
very
and
happy for you.
it's a comfortably uncomfortable
Yep.
feeling. And so one of the things I want to say about like people that may be listening to this and maybe finding themselves in a domestic violence situation, or maybe listening to this and finding themselves realizing like, this, I'm not in a good situation. Safety is first, right? Like I being in this field, have had to meet one-on-one with people on a regular basis, knowing that they were abused and there was nothing I can do about it. I want, my insides want to just leave. But I understand the psychology behind why they are there. And I want to give people who are also may have loved ones who are in a situation to some advice. But for people that are in this situation, safety's first, and be kind to yourself, right? Because I think because a lot of us are able to create logic and understand like this is bad, but not understand why we still stay in it, we can really harm ourselves mentally around being in a situation. I would also suggest to build yourself up, like that's the most powerful thing you can do. The more you start treating yourself well, and it's situation by situation, right? It's not this grandiose thing. You may want to be here, and that's going to take a while to get there, but every situation, try to work on creating space to feed your spirit and allow yourself to find some form of wholeness. Like that's going to be important. And I say that because the more you are creating that space to be whole, right, and to do the best for yourself, you will slowly start to feel uncomfortable in that situation, because the more you treat yourself better, if somebody's treating you wrong, it's not going to feel the same anymore, right? And so like really understand like this is a journey, and beating yourself up doesn't help. If you go to your past, I'm sure you can look at some childhood situations that maybe have caused you to get into a situation like this, where it feels so familiar, right? We go to what's familiar to us. And so that's why, and whether we're talking about domestic violence or any other situation that we're in, a lot of times we're in it because it's familiar. It's familiar because we were in it. It's familiar because it's in our head. It's the way we treat ourselves. So really start to pay attention to how you're treating yourself, because you're listening to yourself. Like we listen to the negative talk and don't even understand that we're doing it. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. We listen to ourselves. And I think the more that I've delved into mental health, and the reason why I become so passionate is because I understand like we have everything that we need to make changes. We have everything we need within us to make changes, but we have to understand that. And so, like, my goal is to just educate you so you can understand that you have the tools, and I just want to teach you how to tap into them.
Yeah. Well, Celeste, tell me this. So you're doing a session with somebody, and you know or suspect that they're being abused. They've all but told you. So why don't you just tell them, hey, listen, you're being abused, and that's not right. And you just tell them, you call the police right now. I'm going to call them for you. Why don't you
Mhm.
just do that?
So, and this goes to my people that may have loved ones who are experiencing abuse. Me telling Jeff to leave his spouse because he's being abused, and, I'm going to do it for you, I'm going to alienate Jeff. Jeff's not going to come and talk to me and tell me anything anymore. Right. So it's going to be so important to uh, make sure that you don't, we're all adults and humans. We cannot force anybody into a decision. We're actually pushing them. I'm pushing Jeff away if I'm asking him to just leave. And that's not, you're not being fair to that person.
Right. Um, and what will they, when the police show up, will they say, you're right, Celeste is a good therapist. And in fact, yes, this person's been abusing me. And now I've changed my mind.
Yeah, and legally, my hands are tied, right? A lot of times, the person that's being abused will tend to, because of the love that they have for the person, and the emotional trauma, they will tend to say that it's not happening, that I'm lying. And also, like, not just thinking about the person, but thinking about me. I can't get so emotionally invested in Jeff's situation, because I could lose myself trying to fight for somebody that doesn't want any help being fought for. Does that make sense?
I think it does. And it's just like, I mean, you already know too, every time, yep, Stockholm syndrome, right? We'll talk about that in a second, define that. But imagine almost all of us want to lose weight, right? So what if someone just follow you around smacking donuts out your hand, right? If you were committed not to eating donuts, you wouldn't eat them. Right now, you have like an ambivalence. You both want to lose weight, but there's something about the donut that won't let you let it go. right? You know, even as you're eating it, you know something's bad. You know, if you ate a salad, you'd have a better outcome. And yet, you're going to end up with a ring of powdered sugar around your face, right? And so that's the thing. It's, when if someone's going to help you with your diet, they don't follow you around saying, drop the gravy, drop it. Instead, they
I need
work with
somebody
you
to
to the
follow me around.
right. That's what it feels like. But in the end, the people that succeed, they can look right at gravy and walk away. And the same thing, unfortunately, with people that are in a domestic violence situation, they can look right at that person and say, this hurts. And I do love you. I even believe that you love me, but your love is toxic and I'm leaving. Right. Maurice talked about Stockholm syndrome. Um, Stockholm syndrome, it's named because some people were held hostage, Stockholm, Sweden, they were held hostage for months. And what they found was that at a certain point, something switched in the people's heads, and they began to identify with their captors. So they began to like almost be on their team. And it makes a lot of sense because when someone has control over you, their priorities start to become your priorities, right? Because you start to sublimate yourself. If they're happy, I'll be happy. Because if they're in a good mood, I get double rations. But if they're in a bad mood, I get beaten. And so you start to just sync up and totally sync up with their emotions. And when that's complete, they call that Stockholm syndrome. But it happens. There's been many cases of that when someone's held captive long term and they flip.
It's literally like the dog example you gave earlier.
Yeah.
Literally like the same thing.
All these things are related. And keep in mind, of course, our we're built on the same chassis as a dog, meaning we're vertebrate mammals. Like even though we perceive them as simple, we have the same fight or flight. We have the same fight or flight mechanisms that a dog has. Sometimes you can't do any of those things. The next thing you do is you acquiesce, right? What do I got to do to make you happy? And it's a form of brainwashing. Can that be correlated with narcissism? Maurice asks, can that be correlated with narcissism? It is in one sense. So Stockholm syndrome is probably not like the victims who have Stockholm syndrome. That's not correlated with narcissism, but narcissists are particularly good at getting people in that situation because their priorities are so clearly all about them and so consistently all about them. And if you let them, they will drown you in I'm more important. I'm the most important. Make me happy. I'm going to give you one example. If you guys want one that you've lived through for the last 4 years, the president of the United States is pretty clearly, Celeste can't say this as a therapist, but I can, is pretty clearly a malignant narcissist. Okay. Somebody who, like, he's the only real person on earth. Everyone else exists. They're all like, what do you call NPCs in a video game. In Grand Theft Auto, if you run somebody over, you don't care because they're not real. You're the only one that's real. And that's what it's like to be a malignant narcissist. And so look at all the people that fall in line behind him because of his absolute confidence and his absolute, when he's happy, he's like, oh, let's say Celeste compliments him. Then he goes, oh, Celeste, you're the best in the world. You're so great. You're amazing. My buddy Celeste, I'm going to give you a raise, a promotion, whatever you want. Then Celeste says, I think you should change one thing. He goes, what did you say? You're ugly. You're stupid. You're the worst. You could never compare to me. You're stupid. I never should have hired you. The fire hose of awfulness. So it trains everybody in his circle to constantly just what will make them happy? What will make them happy? They hide all the people that work in the White House. They hide the real news from them because they don't want to be the one that shows them, sir, you're down in the polls. Sir, you lost. Sir, these legal challenges are not working. If they show him those things, he'll go nuts. So instead, they live in his fake bubble so that they can get the benefit of the happy him.
And there's a lot of people in actually narcissistic relationships as well, which is, it's a lot of for a lot of people that I've worked with, it's a familiar relationship to be in because they grew up in that type of, household. So, you know, it, the biggest thing I want you to take from today, because we talked about a lot. I think the biggest thing I want you to take from today is understanding yourself, right? Understanding yourself, understanding. The things that you struggle with and how they're related to your present. A lot of times we see things as if we were kids again in that trauma space. So, for instance, like if the sky's blue, I see the sky's blue, but because you grew up with glasses and you've never taken them off and the glasses were purple, you see the sky as purple and you can't I can't tell you anything else until you decide to take those glasses off. Until
Right.
you decide to address, what happened and what has happened, you're always going to see your life the same way. You're always going to see yourself as a victim. You're always going to see yourself as being stuck. You're never going to see yourself as being the driver in your seat. And that transition, even though I say like until you do it, I'm not saying that it's tomorrow. Let's do it tonight. Let's get it done. It's something that's going to take time, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And being stuck can be comfortably uncomfortable, right? That's a comfortably uncomfortable place to be in. It's actually a lot harder to be unstuck. I shared a tweet actually today from Jim Carrey that I wanted to share. Somebody who struggles with depression. I'm gonna share it on the screen, and and he said when he was being interviewed. Let me see, share. He said, I believe depression is legitimate, but I also believe that if you don't exercise, eat nutritious food, get sunlight, consume positive materials, surround yourself with support, then you aren't giving yourself a fighting chance. And I think that we choose what's easy. It's easy for me to like not do the things that I do to allow myself to live. Like that's easy to do. It's harder for me to do the opposite. I didn't grow the way I live my life now. I did not grow up in this environment. I did not grow up going on a hike. You wasn't catching me in the woods. No, not at all. You wasn't catching me listening to Les Brown. You wasn't catching me journaling, right? Like a lot of the things I do now is because I'm like, I don't like living in survival mode, right? But me trying to do that initially was hard. I wasn't sold on it. I tell people this story all the time. When I was 19 years old, I was struggling and I ended up my oxygen level dropped and I went to the hospital. I was at BMC and they told me like, yo, we did all the tests, like everything's fine. And and they said, you want to see a social worker? I ripped this IVs out of my arm. I was like, these people think I'm crazy. I was like, they think I'm crazy. They're bugging. I don't want to see nobody's social worker. Y'all can't figure out what's wrong with me. I wanted them to give me a diagnosis, right? So, and that's at 19. So I say that story all the time because I think people see the way I live now and assume that, like it just kind of came naturally, and it didn't come naturally. It was something I had to work hard. But if you work hard now, the rewards are so much greater in the end.
Right.
But if you do
That's
what's
back when
easy
you was
now, you're gonna stay in that same situation.
that's back when you was Celeste the Ratchet patient before you
Celeste
became
the Ratchet,
Celeste the
yep.
therapist. That's back when you tore the stuff off, flipped it over. I'm keeping these pens too. Yeah, and so you think about it, and a lot of times people think what they think their goals that are going to make them happy won't make them happy. Because you hear that Jim Carrey struggles with depression, you go, what do you mean? He made $20 million a film. He's handsome and famous and all these things. He actually has turned to a second job. He's now an artist now. You might not believe it. He's an amazing visual artist, like these amazing paintings where you go, does he have a whole nother talent? But he does. So how can he be depressed? But there's something they call it the hedonic treadmill. Okay. And that's that. They took surveys of lottery winners and recent quadriplegics, and they asked them, how do you feel? And of course, if you're a recent quadriplegic, right, you've lost the use, you broke your neck and lost the use of your hands and feet. Certainly, you're going to be very low, right? Versus somebody who's won $10 million, you're going to be very high. Then they asked them again in 2-3 years, how do you feel? And you know what? They find the same level of happiness.
Wow.
Okay. It doesn't matter if you're quadriplegic or rich. In a little while, you get used to it. I don't know if you ever wondered, but you think about this. All of our ancestors that were enslaved, why didn't they just kill themselves? If you knew you was going to be a slave, your kids are going to be a slave, just kill yourself, right? Because I don't want to do this, but they don't. They find a level of meaning and happiness. Most of the people in concentration camps, if the Nazis didn't kill them, they didn't kill themselves, right? And so it's the same thing. So you can't succeed your way or rich your way or plastic surgery your way or whatever you think you're gonna do. When I get my stomach right, it's over for you bitches. You can't do none of that your way to happiness. You know what I'm saying? The way to be content is inner work, the work that Celeste is talking about. It has no bearing on like the way others perceive you, or if only you get this promotion. Right now, you're living a lot of us are living the us of the past dream. Like if Celeste, if I'd have told you that day, I said one day you're going to be like, you're going to have a renowned show, and you're going to be a therapist helping people, and you'd be like, wow, if I had all that, I'll be living on cloud nine. And now day to day, you still feel like, dog, these kids don't listen. And why do I got to do this? I'm tired of that. And I don't want to, Medicare is saying that, you know what I mean? Like all these frustrating things. Your level isn't higher, because once you level up, it's all the same again. And so
Yeah.
it's a way of inner being is what I'm saying.
No, it is. And this has been I've had some challenging times even this year, some losses, and it's not that life is perfect, but I'm finding the moments, and I'm like holding on to the moments, and I'm being in the moment. And I think this year a lot of people have learned that a lot of that stuff they thought mattered didn't matter, and a lot of people are finding themselves really learning that inward is the way to that peace, because you can't go to a lot of places you used to go. There was a lot of travel junkies. Nothing wrong with traveling, but I think that was their only source of fulfillment, right? And I love traveling. Like you would have caught me on the plane like every few months, but that wasn't my only source of fulfillment, which is why like it feels different. Like I'm still able to pop on a book and like really find joy in that book, right? Even though I can't just hop on the plane and go somewhere. And so like all the other things that I do are added bonus to what I'm already able to provide within.
Right. It's crazy to live a life where you hate most of it, but you say, but I'm saving up to go to Bali. Bali's beautiful, but if that's 1 week of your life, and then it's a 1 week of greatness, 51 weeks of horror. That's not good. You could do better than that. You could almost certainly do better than that. This is not privilege where it's like, oh, if only, it's not privilege where it's saying, oh, ball out like me. I don't care who you are, what your field is, whatever it is. There are plumbers that are self-actualized, that have themselves sorted out, and there are plumbers that are living in hell. And I don't mean they're living in hell because, they're reaching in toilets. They're living in hell because who they are inside is incongruous with who they want to be.
Yes, that's so good. That's so good. I love that. This was a very insightful, yes, Miss P Love. This was a very insightful
Thank you.
dialogue. And, if anything that we're saying resonates for you, like, don't let this just be a feel good podcast. I think we share enough quotes, right? We do enough of like, oh yeah, that was good. That was so good. I loved it. We don't do a lot of action, right? Like we can listen to this, and the same with people who are very devoted church members, and Sundays they feel really good, right? I grew up in a church where it was a dead church, but on Sundays, we was clapping and singing. And it's the environment, right? If I'm singing these joyful songs, I'm around community, I feel good, right? But then when I'm away, that's when those feelings start coming in. But that's when y'all end up picking up social media, you end up calling somebody, texting somebody, and trying to distract yourself from what's there. You can choose to distract yourself from what's there, right? But it's going to continue to grow with or without your consent, or with or without you being conscious of it. It's a choice. You can choose to do that, or you can choose to deal with it, right? And so I personally know that I have a whole world taking place internally, and I want to be a part of it because I want to choose the direction it goes. I don't want it to go into this crazy direction where I start to have all this fear. And it's not that I don't have fear, but I don't allow my fear to stop me. If I didn't, if I didn't, if I allowed my fear to stop me, this podcast wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in private practice. I would be still working where I was working, not happy about where I'm at. But I acknowledge the fear, right? I'm mindful of the fear, and then I push past it. The same way when people get up and they don't want to go to work, they push past it because they're in survival mode. Try to get into living mode. Living mode. Remind yourself, if I know how to survive, if I can push past this feeling to survive, I can actually work on pushing past this feeling so that I can work on living, because living feels so much better.
It
Mic
does.
drop.
No, that's it. You got it right there. It's just you got this inner garden, And either you're tending to it and deciding what goes where, or it's growing out of control and you're going to live with whatever grows. There's no pause. Either you're mowing or it's growing. You know what I mean? So if you want a garden that's beautiful and roses and stuff like that, you got to plant it. You got to do it. That means you got to get in the dirt. You got to dig. You got to get plucked by thorns. But the alternative
It's weeds.
is that it is weeds and it's
Weeds
growing
don't
every
need
which
nothing
way
to
and you
grow.
can't enjoy it. And you look out at it and you feel bad. That's what your inner life, that's what your emotions can be. You got to prune it.
And with the weeds grow without you being a part of it. So most of us, instead of having a beautiful like garden in our head, we have a bunch of weeds. And weeds, they just kind of flow over the garden. So that was good.
There you go.
This was really
And we're
good.
glad you're here, Miss P. Miss P says, I'm here to listen and learn, to transform into a better person and continue on my journey of discovering how to truly love myself and give love to others.
Yes, Miss P, I love it. I love it.
That's
I love
amazing.
you guys. I love everybody that rocks out with me. Nance, I didn't get to your question. I'll just have Jeff answer it really quick, and then I want Jeff to tell us a little bit about Hello Black Trivia.
Thoughts on difference between a full-blown narcissist and having narcissistic tendencies? Well, that's a good question. Everyone has narcissistic tendencies to a degree. Well, not everyone. Most people have narcissistic tendencies to a degree. Um, most mental health or personality diagnoses operate on the spectrum, right? So there's a book called the DSM-5. It's like people think of it like the Bible of mental health. There's a Bible of mental health. Unfortunately, it's not good enough to be called the Bible of mental health because it's not so great. But what it does is it has a list of traits, and depending on how many of those traits that person has, is whether they actually have. It'll be like they have to have 8 out of 10 in order to be diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder. So if you had 7 out of 10, I guess you don't have it. But that's not really how life is, right? In reality, it's just a spectrum. So some people are very, very empathetic. They are great at picturing not just what does Nancy Nance think. They're like, I don't just know what Jeff thinks. I don't just know what Jeff would think if he was Nancy Nance. I know what Nancy Nance thinks. Who is Nancy Nance? That's like the highest level of empathy, right? And some people have none. Some people are very grandiose, right? They think everything they do is the biggest and the best. It's really every trait that Donald Trump has. I'm sorry, but it just is. And so some people think everything they do is the best. Other people are full of doubt. So when you have enough of those traits, you're a narcissist. But really, there's no shame in loving yourself and stuff like that. It's really about how you look at others. That's what I would draw the line. So in other words, if Celeste thinks Celeste is great, that's great. We think Celeste is great. If
Y'all
Celeste
do?
thinks she's great and everyone else is a piece of garbage that can die unless they agree that Celeste is great, that's narcissistic. You see what I'm saying? So there you go.
Crystal, what book are you talking about? Hi, Crystal. And then my other Crystal, hi, I'm glad you came tonight too. Crystal's been rocking with me forever. It says Margaret, but it's Crystal. She's
I was
been
gonna say, yeah, I
explaining.
don't know. That's the weird way to spell Crystal, Margaret.
Margaret keeps checking me every time I would say Margaret, and she drilled it into my head. It's Crystal.
Yeah, she needed to write Crystal. What book are they talking about? Did we talk? We
Yeah,
talking about?
Crystal. I don't know what book you're talking about, honey. Tell me what book you're talking about.
I don't
All
know.
right. While she's telling me the book, I want you to tell me in the paper. Thank you for this.
Oh,
This was a very really dope conversation. Like it was really
mhm.
good. And it was really needed. The good book, Jeff. The DSM-5?
Oh, the DSM. Oh, yeah,
Is that what
that's
you're
like the
talking about?
manual. That's not a fun book to read.
That's not a
That's
book
like
to read.
that's the manual of That's the manual of all the mental health diagnoses that see every like when you go to the doctor they have to bill, right?
Yep.
So the book it'll be like, okay, this person has depression. That's A3, let's just say, right? And so that's like the code. But the book also has the diagnostic criteria. To be diagnosed as depression, they have to have this feeling for this long and fit this many traits. If they only have this one, that's just a depressive episode, not full-blown depression. You see what I'm saying? It's not super fun to read, but that's
Mhm.
what it is, and that's where all the diagnoses are. But if you
Yeah, it's
open it
not.
to read it, you're gonna say, "Damn, I hate this book."
Yeah,
Because
it's not
Celeste, how
fun.
you feel about the book? You love it, and
I
Celeste
had to
needs
learn
it.
it for you want to read through it? Okay, be my guest, girl.
Feel free.
Some
Ain't
people
cheap.
have actually looked through it, but I needed it to study for the test, but I don't really like it because it. I just don't like it. But
It doesn't capture the breadth of human experience,
it doesn't.
but it's
I
the best
agree.
thing that we have. The truth is, understanding people is harder. It's hard to quantify. Is this person a narcissist? Well, they only have 6.5 of the traits. That's not how. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But yes, if you read through it, it can give you some clarity, and you could enjoy it. Miss P says that Celeste, you're awesome twice. Yes, I agree.
Oh,
She
please. She says we are both awesome, and I agree with her.
was.
So I ordered this. I haven't gotten it yet, but I want you to tell people about Hella Black Trivia. Do you have to be black to buy it? Because my audience is very diverse.
You have to be black. You have to send a picture of your forearm. The So Hella Black Trivia is something that me and my partner Pop started a few years ago. We went to a trivia night. I think people can see by now that I'm a guy with a little bit of knowledge, and so we said we go to this trivia night. We'll eat some free wings when we win. The people at the trivia night treated us all right, but the trivia was all aimed in one direction. Right? It's all about episodes of Friends and the movie Gone with the Wind and mayonnaise and shorts in the winter. The trivia was all in one direction. And so my boy Pops had an idea. Let's start our own trivia night. And so that was 5 years ago. And now Hello Black Trivia has been going 5 years strong. When we first did it, it was one night a month. But now we do like events and stuff like that. We do people's like holiday parties and smash holiday parties. And we have a take home game. And that's what Celeste has the website up right now. But it's hellablacktrivia.com. And you can actually buy the take home game and play Black Trivia in your own home. And it has nothing to do with anything we talked about tonight. But thank you for sharing it, Celeste.
Oh no, it doesn't. But I always promote to what people are doing at the end. That's what I do.
That's what you do, baby. That's very not narcissistic of you, very empathetic and generous.
Oh,
I
I'm
would
so
say
far.
that you don't meet the criteria.
I'm so far from it. So that's good. And I've actually attended a live event, and the goal before the panoramic demic started, I had talked to Jeff about us doing the show live. Not where we're doing it live, but doing it in front of an audience. So that's the goal to kind of eventually go back to that. Just
We're
really
gonna do it,
quick.
and when y'all get to the door, I'm gonna vaccinate every one of you myself. Vaccine, bang, vaccine.
Yeah, I think it'll be a dope show. Jeff has good energy. I think we match each other's energy really well. Relationships are hard. Wants to be clear. He's not being blackmailed. The person who actually promises to keep his privacy private, I'm really concerned that the person will share my secrets through carelessness or vengeance.
I feel you.
A
Well,
bad vulnerability hangover. Bad case of
well,
vulnerability.
I appreciate you sharing that. Relationships are hard, right? So we don't know whether or not, in terms of them keeping your secret, whether or not you're nervous because you're anxious about it, or you're nervous because they're giving you reason to be nervous. The fact is, though, I think we all can agree that living, which is hard, easier said than done. But when you get to the point where your private self and your public self are the same self, then you will have totally broken free from this. Your life won't be perfect, but you'll never have to worry about that again because the people that know and love you will know and love you for who you really are. And that's definitely what I want for you.
Yes, I love it. Thank you, Jeff. So Jeff will be back on the 17th, I believe, if I'm not
Let's do it.
mistaken. De-
Sounds true.
uh, I think it's December 17th. So don't forget, you all can always email the questions on my website. There's a place where you can write comments and just kind of write the question. You don't even have to leave your name or anything like that. If you would like questions answered about relationships, one thing that Jeff loves, he loves solving problems. And I love having him here to kind of help me do this because he really thinks I feel like I think outside the box, but he has that extra knowledge, the couple that, that really helps it and it makes it so interesting. So definitely like send your questions. Relationships, as he started off earlier in the podcast, does not have to be romantic. It could be, we've had somebody come on and talk about a situation with their son and brother and we helped him kind of like think it through. So feel free to send your questions. It can be done anonymously. It does not have to, I don't need to be in your business to have enough people's business that I'm already in. So I promise you, I don't want to know. So yeah, this was good. Anything else you want to add before I leave?
I love all y'all. Let's do it. Let's be better next week than we were last week. Let's do it.
What about what about tomorrow?
Well, it takes time. I'm not going to pretend that you're going to tonight. You're going to leave out here. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then tomorrow you're going to wake up. I ain't doing it. Every day. You got to do it every day. Get a little bit better.
Yes, and it has to be an intentional thing. Really quick, if you're waking up late for work every day, you're gonna find yourself setting your alarm for getting up for work. But unfortunately, when we tell, we're telling ourselves, I need to change, and it's like, well, if you really think about it, what am I really doing to create that change? So if you're telling yourself that you want to change, question yourself, challenge yourself. What am I doing to change? Right? I've had so many different moments, where I'm always evolving, I'm always changing and saying what I want to do better. Right? I just had to take my iPad, the kids' electronics, because I'm telling them to take out the trash and clean the table, and then every day, every now and then, I'm finding myself taking out the trash. I
And
took the
they're just
iPad
playing
away for
Among Us. And
today.
you just
I
hear them
said, I can't
arguing and
keep
playing
talking
Among Us.
about it. I got to be about it.
Yeah.
I got to be intentional about it. I'm setting them, and I don't have bad kids, but I'm setting them up for failure where they're not being responsible. And so I got me a little whiteboard last night, because after this is a true story, y'all. Y'all know I'm mad transparent. I got off the live podcast. I finished. I go upstairs. They're knocked out. I wanted to do the old school thing and wake them up, but they're like 7 and 9. I wanted to be like, yo, take out the trash, do the table. So I had to write on my whiteboard. I got a whiteboard to make sure that I am, you know, writing these things down. I wrote on there for Friday, no iPad in big letters, because I didn't want to wake up tomorrow with their little cute faces and I forget that I'm supposed to take away the iPad. And so that was something that I had to be intentional about. There's these little things that add up that you really have to. And I'm like, what am I doing to change? So that's important. That was a real life example that just happened yesterday, guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And next time, if we remember, we'll talk about one of the cornerstones of my practice is the solution focus method. And it's just what you're
Ah,
talking about. But we talk about it next time.
your boy, Romello, we leaving.
Good to see you, Romello.
Romello, come back
He was
on the
busy
17th.
telling a woman, I ain't marrying you. I ain't marrying you. We stand on the third date forever. I don't care that you got 4 of my kids. Never.
Romello, we'll be back on the 17th. Jeff, I love you. Thank you so much.
Love you too.
We
Thank you
will
for
talk
having
to
me.
you on the 17th.
See you then.
So that's a wrap. We'll be back Monday. I need to write down who I'm having on Monday. I'm having somebody on Monday. Actually, on Thursday, I have Romello Malco coming on, so that should be fun. We're going to be talking about the inner critic. Relationships are hard. Remember to bring that up so that we'll make sure we talk about it, since Jeff just mentioned it. I have a solution focused way of thinking about things. I've never heard of this solution focused method. So I want to hear it too. We on the same page. We both want to hear it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Don't forget, if you want to check out any other episodes, or if you want to kind of listen to this, don't forget you can check it out. I'm literally streaming on all podcasting platforms. Also, you can email Jeff, jeff@rogersleads.com. If you ever wanted to work with him. If you wanted more information about Hella Black Trivia, you can email him info@hellablacktrivia.com. I hope that, yeah, Romello. So that clip, me and Jeff talked about it, but it was like 7 minutes long. That's so funny you said that, because I just see that's really circulating everywhere, but it was too long for me to put up. But he was going to summarize it, but we ended up talking about domestic violence, which is fine. But that would have been a really good topic to like dissect. Love you guys so much. Thank you for rocking out with me. Thank you guys for sharing my content, and always being here, whether you're listening to me on audio, whether you're watching me on the stream, whether you share my content. Like, every little bit counts, and I promise you, I don't take it lightly. I know I couldn't be here without the support of you, especially my Periscope family, who have always been rocking out with me, and Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, everywhere. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. If anything I ever say resonates for you, like, understand you have powers to make changes, but you just have to have faith to believe in yourself. And when you have faith to believe in yourself, I promise you that no one can ever take that away from you. I'll see you guys on Monday.
Smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist.